Today we're going to make the simplest bread recipe. In this recipe, your cooking vessel will also be your mixing bowl, so you're only going to use one pan, less things to dirty. There's no kneading. This is a recipe you can make in the morning, and when you come home 8-10 hours later, it'll be ready to go in an oven. If you know you're having some friends over in the evening, this is something you easily could put together in less than 5 minutes in the morning and have fresh bread ready to go by dinner time. Okay, I have my non-stick loaf pan. I just put that on the scale. You want to fill up your non-stick pan with about 80% flour. I have 600 grams of flour, about 80% full. You want to write down how much flour you're using. So I have 600 grams of flour in this loaf pan. Toward my scale. Now I'm going to add 2% salt. So 2% of 600 is 12 grams. You want to add 1% of dry yeast. So 1% of 600 is 6 grams. Tar that out. I developed this recipe with 1% yeast because I found that allows me a window to make it before I leave for work in the morning, and when I get back 10 hours later, the bread is ready to go in the oven. So all my dry ingredients are in here. This is a 75% hydration bread, so I'm going to add 75% water in relation to the flour. So the flour is 600 grams, 75% of 600 is 450. This water is warmed to about 115 degrees. In the description area and on my webpage, I will put this recipe in cups and teaspoons. This dough will almost double in volume in this pan, but you're not going to get much of an oven spring once you put it in the oven because this is a no-knead bread. There's not a ton of gluten development as you would if you were making a more complex bread. So all my recipes can be found on justcookwithmichael.com. If you're interested in purchasing some of the tools I use, I do have links in the YouTube description area, and I do get a percentage of those links to help support the channel. Normally I cover it in plastic wrap, but this time I won't because I'm going to do a time lapse just so you can see the rise of the bread. You know, the bread will rise and stick to the plastic wrap. If you want the plastic wrap to come off easier, you could spray it with a little bit of nonstick oil. I do expect this to rise just slightly above the rim of the pan. So you even could use a nonstick cooking pan. You want to fill up about 80% of your cooking container with flour. So for this pan, it's about 300 grams. So 1% of 300 is 3 grams. So that's 3 grams of yeast. Next, you want 2% of the weight of your flour to be salt. 2% of 300 grams of flour is 6 grams of salt. So again, I'll tar out my scale and I will put 6 grams of salt. So in this pan, we have 300 grams of flour, 3 grams of yeast, and 6 grams of salt. According to the baker's percentage, this is going to be a hydration of 75%. What's nice about this is it could easily vary from 70% up to 80% water, and you'll be fine. So I'll mix in my dry ingredients a little bit there, and then I'll tar my scale again, and I'll put in 225 grams of warm water. My water is at 126, so that's fine. You don't want to go much above 130 or you kill your yeast. All our ingredients are in the pan. Now you just want to mix it up and incorporate the dough. And I just like to clean the edge of my pan. And that's it. That's it. I'll cover it in plastic wrap and it could proof from 8 to 10 hours. There's 2 ways to develop gluten. One is time, because as soon as you mix water with flour, gluten will start to form. Gluten's made up of 2 different proteins, and as soon as water's added to flour, it's starting to make gluten. The other way to develop gluten quick is to knead it. But since we're not kneading this dough, we need a lot of time to allow some gluten development. All right, I left the house, left this going with a time-lapse camera on. It's been 9 hours. You can see that the bread has risen probably about, I don't know if it rose quite double, but probably by about, I don't know, 35% or so. In 9 hours, I filled it up 80%. It's just about over the lip. I think you'd be fine going another hour before it went over the lip. You always could start these recipes, instead of filling up the pan of 80% flour, just about 70% flour if you want to be sure it's not going to overflow the pan. So it looks great. My oven's at 425. This one I'm going to sprinkle some cheese at the end with some fresh herbs. I have some fresh oregano I'm going to put on there. This one I'm just going to leave plain so you can see how that comes out. Usually it takes about 40 minutes. Again, I really push these instant read thermometers. If you use an instant read thermometer, this bread will be done when it reaches between 205 and 210 degrees. And within that temperature range, the bread will be fully cooked. It's more if you just want to get a little more color into it, then you could cook it to the higher temperature to about 110. I expect this little one to be done sooner. It is at 209, so the little one is done in 25 minutes. The big one after 25 minutes is still about 144, so it probably has at least 10 more minutes left. Just put a little bit of cheese and fresh herbs on top, and I'll put that in the oven for about 3 minutes. Okay, it's been 40 minutes at 425. We'll check our loaf pan. It is at 207 degrees Fahrenheit, so this is done. Okay, the world's simplest bread is done. You can see it's 6:30. When I first added the water and made these this morning, it was 8:30. And I baked them after about 9 hours, but you could bake them anywhere from like 6.5 to 12 hours. You always could slow it down by putting it in the refrigerator. Like if you get home and it looks like it's proofing too much, you can put it in the refrigerator for a while. For such a simple bread, and trust me, this is so delicious for something you could throw together so quick in the morning and have it ready for dinner. The bread's been cooling for about 15 minutes. Yeah, it just pops right out of there. And then after the loaf pan, look at that. Gotta love these non-stick loaf pans. Doesn't that look delicious for something so simple? This is the only dish I dirtied. Right, now we'll cut into these and see how the crumb looks inside. There you go, really moist inside. Got so good by itself. I can't imagine with some butter. Really good. I'm about to get some butter out of the refrigerator. I do have other recipes on my website, some Portuguese breads. Some of them are sweet, some of them aren't. But check those out on my website. Thanks for joining me. Now go cook for someone you love.